All right, well, TikTok and Facebook, we have some people, and YouTube. All right, good. So I need to talk with you guys again. You know, we missed a day yesterday. Just wasn't a good place to be doing it yesterday. What's it going to take to get this done? It's a question that I keep getting asked. Guys, we are dependent upon someone else to act, right? So I can't give you an answer to that. I can tell you that I've got a nasty infection in my ear. I can tell you that that I think it's close, but it's been close for a while. But what you guys don't know is I've been at this for 9 years now. We've been building this case for 9 years. And so, since we've been building it for 9 years, we're at a point now where there's one obstacle left, and it's getting in to be heard at that court. That's it. But we are dependent upon them to do the right thing, to take action as required. Now, again, you guys, I'm not coming in on an appeal. I'm not asking them to hear the case. You see, a lot of people are now talking about the right to original jurisdiction, right? And that your judgments are void. Well, they are technically, but there still has to be some things that has to happen before we can actually void those judgments. If a state took action in a case in which it didn't have jurisdiction, that is a void judgment. Anything that court produces is going to be void without force or effect. That is true. But before we can claim that a right has been violated, there's some critical step that starts it. And that is that you must show that someone had a duty to act and they breached that duty. Duty is derived from the law, okay? That's all the law is. The law creates a duty or an obligation. So again, you have the right that exists. It's always, you have the right to live, for instance. You will always have that right. It's always had it. But in order to protect it, we created a law. And that law says that you will have an obligation to not kill someone. So you have a duty to do it. And by a breach of duty, by breaking the law, you would then violate someone's right to live. So you have to have an enforcement element. You have to have a law in place to enforce a right. That's why rights always derive from another's duty to act. You cannot claim that you've had a right violated until you first show that someone had a duty to act and they breached that duty. That's a critical first step, you guys. And if you don't complete that first step, if you're not aware of that, then you cannot claim your rights have been violated. And so, like today with these judges, you guys want to go out and you want to talk about these crimes that they're committing, but they're having you submit it to a judicial misconduct board. What does the judicial misconduct board do? They can't prosecute for a crime. You see, when you go to a board, right, of their peers, they get a sanction or something, right? It's not a crime. You have to have a crime committed before you can show that the right has been violated, because the right is enforced by a crime, by law. So when you guys go to the judicial misconduct board, and the judicial misconduct board says, well, yeah, okay, we're gonna hold that judge accountable for his crimes or for his actions. No, they're not, because that judge committed a crime, and yet he's, you get a slap on the wrist, and he's still a judge. That's not how it goes. So if you guys were to have a crime committed against you, robbery, for instance, someone came to your house and robbed you, you don't go to a robbery misconduct board to report that. No, you go to the law enforcement and you say, here's a criminal affidavit, here's a crime, my written statement as to what happened to me, right? And that initiates a criminal process. They don't want you to initiate a criminal process. They try to make you avoid it, because they know that if you were to report the crime and actually prosecute the crime, now your right has been violated, and now you have injunctive relief that you can seek. You have to show the law. Now the law for judges and prosecutors is the law that we're using. Title 18, subsection 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. Because anytime a public official deprives you of a right that's guaranteed to you by the Constitution of the United States under the authority of a state statute, ordinance, custom, or regulation, then that would be the crime. There is a crime because there was a law. The law says that they have to provide it. You see, you all have the right to due process of the law because the judges in every state have the duty to ensure that those rights are provided. They have to provide them. And if they don't, then they break the law. And the breaking of law, guys, that's not a misconduct board. That's a crime. It's a crime that's punishable by death, right? So we have to look at what they're telling you to do, and then just know that that's not the route that you're supposed to go. If it's not the way that we have to do it, why would we do it a different way for them? You don't go to a robbery misconduct board to report a robbery. You go to the law enforcement, you go to police, and you report law enforcement. Once the law enforcement hears about it, they are supposed to investigate it. And once they investigate it, then they're supposed to go through the adjudication process and hold those criminals accountable for the crimes they commit. You see, what I'm doing right now, you guys, is you guys today, you do not have the right to have your case heard by the Supreme Court because that court believes that it's a court of discretion. You guys believe it's a court of discretion because we were all lied to ever since 1925 by the United States Congress. They said, hey, guess what? We're going to make this court a court of discretion. And they made us forget about original jurisdiction of that court. Forget about it, right? Same thing with the when they told us that we have to petition that court to a writ of certiorari because that's petitioning the court's appellate jurisdiction, not its original jurisdiction. Because what you're doing with a writ of certiorari is you are requesting that court to review a lower court's decision. That is the court's appellate jurisdiction. Guys, what Article 3 says is it says in all cases in which a state shall be party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. In all other cases of equity and law, they shall have appellate jurisdiction. So we're very familiar with the Supreme Court's appellate jurisdiction, but we're not familiar with its original jurisdiction because that hasn't been invoked since 1890. It's been forgotten, right? And yet, even though it's been forgotten, doesn't make it valid. They intentionally misled the people. They told the people that the only way you can petition it is by using its appellate jurisdiction, invoking that, and they said it's a court of discretion. Congress cannot amend the Constitution of the United States. They could propose amendments, and once proposed by 2/3 and passed by 2/3 of both House and Senate, then it goes out to the states, and once 3/4 of the states adopt it through suffrage, then it becomes part of the Constitution. That's the only, Congress can't change it. So if Congress came in and said, well, you know what, we're going to make that Supreme Court a court of discretion, that law, the 1925 Judicial Reform Act, can only be valid and constitutional so long as it doesn't breach the obligations of the Constitution. So the court can be a court of discretion, but only if the state is not named a party. If the state is named a party, they don't have discretion because that's an obligation created by the Constitution. So here we go, right? We are not asking them to hear anything because that's our servant. Supreme Court works for us. It's not above us. It works for us. And when we go there with the writ of certiorari and we ask the court to please review our lower court's decision, we give that court the opportunity to say, oh, well, if you're going to ask me, I'm going to say no. We're not asking court. We're telling you that you have an obligation that you must fulfill, right? So what I'm doing is I am establishing the obligation so that you all can have the right. Because you don't have the right today because the first step is we got to show that there's an obligation. We're not going to get any action out the edge. You guys can go in, you can file motion after motion to void your judgment or absence of jurisdiction. None of that's going to work until we show that there's an obligation for that court, the top court to hear it. They don't want to admit it, but it's absolutely true. And it's not only upheld by the Constitution, but by the founders' own words, John Jay, Alexander Hamilton, and James Madison. It's upheld by the Judicial Code. I mean, everything is true about the fact that if the state is a party in the cause, that state cannot be presumed to be neutral and biased to act as the judge of the cause. And as a result, the body of men that make up the state cannot be both accuser and judge, or else the judge has a conflict of interest. He works for the plaintiff. The same person that the prosecutor does, and police, and everyone else. No man can be judged in his own cause. So when the state comes at you with an allegation, whether it's CPS, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's prosecutor, if the state comes at you with an allegation, that state cannot be judged in that case because the judge has a constitutional obligation to recuse himself because original jurisdiction is assigned to the United States Supreme Court in accordance with the Constitution of the United States of America. So the Judicial Reform Act, it cannot alter the Constitution of the United States. Only an authentic act of the people can amend the Constitution of the United States, and that has not been done. So we can tiptoe around it if we want, but at the end of the day, Congress, you didn't have authority to be able to make it for everything. You could for anything other than a state, but if states named a party, that's an obligation, and you may not alter the obligation because that would be amending the law. So that's why we had to figure out a different way to petition, because we couldn't petition through writ of certiorari. We couldn't ask that court to review a lower court's decision because then we would be invoking appellate jurisdiction, and they can use discretion in appellate jurisdiction, but they can't in original. So that's why we had to come with the different writ. That's why we had to come with the writ of habeas corpus, because that court only allows certain writs. I looked at the writ of substance. I was sold on the writ of substance. I thought that was the one that we were going to do. No, I'm not getting enough sleep, but that doesn't matter, guys. Don't worry about me, okay? I'm out here on the road, and when I'm on the road, it sucks, right? It sucks. But so there's only a couple of writs that you can use with the United States Supreme Court under our jurisprudence. One of them is the habeas corpus, and that's written in the Constitution. The Constitution says specifically under Article 1, it says that the privilege of writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended except for in case of actual rebellion. And now, that means that we have the established privilege of the writ of habeas corpus. It's always there, except for in case of actual rebellion, which I've already mentioned that I'm concerned about. Some of the things that's happening out here on the political front. I'm concerned about us, being brought together in a little bit of conflict, with the political polarity that might exist with the stuff on the board. I'm afraid that some of their things that they're doing is trying to get us so that we will act in such a way that they'll be able to say that we're now in a state of rebellion, so that they can suspend the habeas corpus, because that's really the only play that they have. And that's why we want to be really, really careful here, because if they try to create conflict, we want to be able to head that off really fast, guys. We want to, because government is doing a lot of stuff right now because they want to get out of this. They don't want this to come forward. Guys, what we have here is we have the United States Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, right? The top court, the court that directs all the courts in the country on how to do business, on what to do. Yeah, I'm working on water. I'm trying. The highest court in the land. We have the highest court in the land that in 1833 directed all the courts within the United States of America that they don't have to give the Bill of Rights and things in the Bill of Rights to the people, because that's only a restriction against the federal government and not the state government, as they said. Now, that's not true, you guys. That's not true. Article 6 says that the judges of the several states shall be bound thereby anything in the Constitution or laws of any state contrary notwithstanding. So if the state judges are bound by anything in the Constitution, then obviously the Constitution applies to states. And if the Constitution applies to states, then the Bill of Rights has to apply to states because it's part of the Constitution. That's Article 5, the Special Amending Procedure. It says once ratified, proposed amendments become part of the Constitution in all intents and purposes. That's what it says in Article 5. So once the Bill of Rights was actually it was passed by 2/3 of both House and Senate, and then it went out to states. Once 3/4 of states ratified it through our suffrage, then it became part of the Constitution in all intents and purposes. So the question would be then is, this judge in, say, Washington, or the judge in Virginia, is this judge in Virginia bound by the Constitution? Yeah. But why is he not bound by the Bill of Rights then? Well, because the rights apply to people. His obligations are within the first articles, but his obligations are to preserve those rights that are enumerated within the Bill of Rights. So to say that the people of the United States don't get what the Bill of Rights says, such as the grand jury, is preposterous, absolutely wrong. But you guys got to understand that the reason why the Marshall Court made that decision in 1833 was because they were trying to pave the way for the First National Bank. They wanted the National Bank to be put in place. They knew it was coming. They knew the states were going to sue if they established it. And they needed to find a way so that the states could not sue. So they said, they got an opportunity with Barron versus Baltimore. They said, oh, Constitution doesn't apply to the states, to the Bill of Rights. And in doing that, remember, to bring a case to federal court to sue, you must be directly impacted by the law. So if they were bringing the National Bank online, and they ruled right prior to that the Constitution doesn't apply to states, then what that means is that the states are not impacted by the law. Therefore, they don't have standing in federal court. They can't sue, and thus Marshall paved the way to permit that First National Bank to be put in place. That's all Barron versus Baltimore was he was trying to make it so that the states wouldn't be able to sue because the people did not want a national bank system, right? We all know that. We all know the dangers of this central banking system. We've been fighting this for years. This is the third national bank we have right now, and look at what it's doing to us. So, but nonetheless, what Barron versus Baltimore did was it created a situation where now 243 years later, no one gets the right to indict by a grand jury because that court told all the courts within its purview, all the courts in the country, that they don't have to do it. So we had fraud that was introduced by the highest court in the land in 1833. Fraud because that court doesn't get to say you don't have to, that we can amend the Constitution or we can eliminate it. The only reason why you don't get the grand jury today, or the reason why you're not in that grand jury proceedings to confront the hearsay evidence against you, is because the highest court in the land said in 1833, courts, you don't have to give it to them. They don't get to change the Constitution. They don't get to do that. And yet they did. And this has been going on for years, you guys. This is called the incorporation doctrine. And what the incorporation doctrine was that you know, we passed the Bill of Rights. We passed the Constitution. You know, 1787 and then 1791, and then you know we went on and we had a number of years of use of it, right? And then in 1833, Supreme Court comes out under weight court, slave owners, and said, yeah, that doesn't apply to people. That doesn't apply to states. It only applies to the federal government. And at that moment, the only place that the Bill of Rights applied to was the 10 square miles of Washington D.C. That's it. If you lived in Washington, D.C., you got the Bill of Rights. You got the Bill of rights. You're protected by them because that's the only place that was federal. All the states, you know, all the state territories and stuff, they were not federal. Therefore, the states did not have to give you what the Bill of Rights said that they gave you because they permitted the states to have their own constitutions. So if the state constitution says that you don't have the freedom of speech, then you don't have the freedom of speech. You only get what the state constitution gives you. And then the federal government is not in a position to enforce the federal laws because the Supreme Court had taken the states' rights doctrine and claiming that states have rights. So states have the right to be able to, you know, to be able to govern within their sovereign jurisdiction, their borders, and that the federal government doesn't interfere with what the states do. That's the argument that we get every single day in this bullshit, right? Is that these states say, oh, They take away our rights, right? They abridge our rights. But then when we go to the federal government, they say, oh, that's a state issue. States have the right to do that. They don't. States' rights is bullshit. Because states don't have rights, guys. People have rights. Government has powers. States have power, not rights. People have rights. States have power. So when you say that states have rights, what you're doing is you're permitting the state to become a person because only people have rights. They want you to argue that. They want you to say the states have rights. Because if the states have rights, now the states can own slaves. Now they can own property. Now they can be immune from being sued in federal court because you have a contract that prevents you from being. States don't have rights. States have powers. And those powers are specifically limited in order to preserve the individual rights of the people. So don't buy into that narrative. Don't let them say that to you. States do not have rights. States have powers. People have rights. Powers are limited to preserve and protect the individual rights of people. But that's what they say, and they say it consistently. They say that states have rights, and as a result of states' rights, then states can create their own laws, and the federal government is in no position to force the states to enforce the federal rights when they fail to give them to the people. That is a case called Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. It's a Supreme Court case. and the Crunkshack versus United States case. So those are both United States Supreme Court. In Crunkshack versus United States, what happened there was that an individual or a group of black men were defending their voting location at the courthouse, and that was liked very well by the white folk there, and they came in and ended up killing them, right? So the state was unwilling to prosecute for these murders. Or they were going to do it. Why would we hold these black or these white men accountable for the killing of these 20 black men? So the state wouldn't do it. So the United States, the federal court, decided they were going to pick it up, and they were going to pick it up under the newly formed civil rights laws, right? And so they were going to sue for these particular men that died for their right to live under the deprivation of rights under common law, right? So what they were saying was basically that these guys had the right to vote and the right to live, and that these individuals, these white guys, they killed them and they violated their right to live, as a result of the murder. Well, when they took it into court, when the U.S. attorney took it into court, the judges came out and said, "Oh no. Federal government is not in a position to enforce the rights of the people when the states fail to do it. We have no role in it because states have rights." And that was the decision was made. It was same time, same periods, all this bullshit, late 1800s, Wake Court as well. And, these are decisions that have got lasting impact on us. That's the reason why, you're not heard. That's the reason why you can't get action in the federal court, is because of that particular ruling. And once again, guys, you got to understand, Waite and his court were slave sympathizers. They wanted the slavery institution. They made statements that the Reconstruction Amendments may be on the books forever, but we intend to make it a dead letter. To make a black man and white man eat together would be another form of slavery. They did not want the Reconstruction Amendments to come together because they wanted to be able to re-enslave these people. And we see that through convict leasing during this period of time. We see that through the rulings. We see that through Hurtado versus California, the elimination of the grand jury. Guys, if we have set the slaves free, let's just say that we set the slaves free, and now the slaves are able to do whatever they want, right? Now they're people and counted as people. But if we were able to re-enslave them through the bullshit of the 13th Amendment, because the 13th Amendment didn't say set them free, it said, set them free unless they're criminals. And as a result, they made synonymous the term slave and criminal. They mean the same thing. If you're a criminal, you're a slave. If you're a slave, you're a criminal. So if we were able to re-enslave the people, these newly released slaves, if we were able to re-enslave them through criminality, then all that they had to do was make these people into criminals. And so at the turn of the century, 1880 to 1910, they were going out and they were just arresting these guys by masses, right? They were arresting by the masses, and they were charging with bullshit stuff. Like, I remember, whistling at a white guy's wife. Well, that's an offense. But they would go and they would arrest these people for trivial offenses, right? And they would bring them in, but they wouldn't bring them into a regular process. I mean, they'd take them into a barn where there's a justice of peace sitting there, and but they would threaten and intimidate them, right? They would tell them, "Oh, we're going to take your family away. We're going to lynch you, all these other things, unless you say you're guilty." And they would take them through this sham process where the justice of peace was both the jury and the judge in this. And then the moment that slave, right, or the moment that free man said, "Oh yeah, I did this, I committed a crime," now he's a slave. Now he's put on a train, bound for the call. Now he's re-enslaved, and they can send him down to all these institutions in the South that were decimated by the removal of the enslavement, right? So, we saw a massive, massive number of recriminalization of bringing these previously freed people and then giving them these arbitrary charges. And the arbitrary charges were permitted because of the absence of the grand jury. Because there wasn't anybody there. There was no neutral bias. It was just some sheriff or some constable that heard, "Oh yeah, he whistled," and they would just bring the charge, whether it was valid or not. And they bring him in, and then they force him into saying he was guilty, right? And then he was shipped off to an institution that was going to work him literally to death. During this period of time, you guys, we had a greater likelihood of death here in America than the Soviet gulags. I mean, almost every one of these guys, most of them died. Because there was a big difference between chattel slavery and this slavery. Because with chattel slavery, those slaves were owned. They were property. So they had to take care of them. They had to feed them. They had to make sure they had medical treatments. So you took care of your property, right? So the slaves were at least taken care of. This slavery was not the same way, because this slavery, if someone died, they should go grab another one. So they worked these men to death, and many of them weren't guilty of anything, nothing. We know that now, but this is what was happening, and this was horrible. Like we have I think there were like 4,000 people who were sent up to the mines for Carnegie Steel. You know, I mean, 4,000 prisoners were sent up there to work. Many of them died, you know, in horrible conditions. And so we know in the past, we can see, you know, what happened and the injustice that occurred during that period of time. And you guys, right now today, it's no different. It's no different. You know, they may not be working them to death because, you know, they want to claim humanity, but no. You know, we're taking our own people for trivial bullshit things, right? In fact, we're even creating the environment where those trivial bullshit things can be done. We're creating and promoting a sense of scarcity, right? That these men, you know, they grew up in this environment where they don't have money, they don't have opportunity. That nobody cares about educating them because no one cares to educate a slave. Because if you educate a slave, then they're no longer a slave. So, you know, the whole institution is going to want to keep the people that are there, especially the families, in that state of enslavement. They don't want them educated. They're going to put fences around their houses, their Section 8 houses. They're going to funnel them in and out of gates so that they get used to doing that. Yeah, I can turn all this shit off. Assholes. Okay. Okay. So we saw this at the turn of the century, and we're doing the same thing now. 800% increase in the prison population in 30 years. What's driving that increase in the prison population? Well, a desire to force the poor and vulnerable in our society into involuntary servitude by just simply calling them a criminal, right? Calling them a prisoner. But if we want to have that work, then we can't have a neutral and biased third party, because the state is the one profiting off of it. So the state needs to bring these accusations because, you know, they want to be able to just go out and arrest someone whenever they need it. They have quotas to meet. They have contracts to abide by. You know, even these jails, they've got these food contracts. And with these food contracts, they've got a certain number of people that need in. God help them if they waste any food. And so they maintain a certain level of capacity based upon contracts, not based upon crime, not based upon right or wrong, but based upon the number that they have in there, because they got to maintain a certain quantity. That's not justice. That's a business. And so we've always ran this fucking justice as though it's a business. I mean, you know, it's always been that way. It's always been based upon, you know, the labor of the people, because even our founders and forefathers, they didn't create justice system, they created an enslavement system, because all that justice was a term that was used to protect their property, right? That's all it was. It was just a term that our founders created to preserve and protect their property. See, justice as we see it today, it doesn't exist, because justice would never side with one party or another. Justice is equally concerned about the accuser and the accused, because justice wants to bring about truth, wants to bring about reconciliation. Reconciliation can't happen when you're simply repaying the debt with more debt, right? You settle the debt by acknowledging it, and you reconcile. You come together and you resolve the conflict that exists. Our government does not do that. It doesn't want that, right? I mean, you get no contact orders between you know the victim and the defendant. They don't bring them together to try to resolve it, and yet this is the systems that are in existence over in Europe, Sweden, Norway, and they work. I mean, Sweden's shutting down its last prison right now because it works, because we can reconcile the people as long as we don't permit this institution to eliminate the ability to communicate. Anything can be resolved through communication, and once again, You know, the reason why people hurt another human being is because they don't respect life, because they were never taught respect. You know, if you're abused as a child, abused horrendously by your parents, right, then you don't respect your own self, and therefore you go out and you hurt other people. That's the source of all of the worst of the worst, the serial killers, the serial rapists. Those people right there, they were abused and hurt as a child, and nobody addressed that. And as a result, then that hurt that they had, they go out and hurt other people. Hurting people hurt people. And so the majority of them can be addressed, but we have to address it not through a system that takes the hurting and puts them into a hurtful situation and then expects them to get better, because that doesn't work, right? No, the issue of morality is a matter of public health. We got to deal with this as though it's public health, because it's a matter of dealing with the hurting people, but dealing with the trauma. And that is a matter of public health. That's why we've got to switch this from the Attorney General having control, where the Attorney General is all about money, right? All about punishment, all about enslavement, because he's got a degree in adjudicative law. Remember, you guys, don't mince words anymore, okay? If the 13th Amendment makes synonymous slave and prisoner, they mean the same thing. A slave is a prisoner is a slave. No denying that. If they make synonymous the term slave and prisoner, then that means that if you have a degree that makes a person into a criminal, and that's what your degree is how to make a person into a criminal, then unfortunately you have a degree in making a person into a slave. You have a degree in slavery. There's no mixing that up, okay? And if that offends you, if there's any attorneys on here, I'm sorry, but you go and deal with the issues there, because your industry is about removing the freedom of the people by orders that are made by people that were slave traders to the judges. And you follow their orders, not the laws that set free, in order to enslave and imprison the people, which we know that 13th Amendment, the very law that we have, it says that a prisoner is a slave and a slave is a prisoner. So if you have a degree in jurisprudence, if you have a degree in adjudicative law, you have a degree in slavery. You have a degree that removes freedom. It doesn't restore it. So that's why I say that, that you cannot go to an attorney and ask an attorney to do a post-conviction relief. Attorneys can't do what I'm doing right now. They have no clue how to do this. They can't grasp it because their education and knowledge ends with the prisoner. It doesn't set the prisoner free. You have to have the other type of technical expertise. And that's why, this substantive law, people need to understand there's a whole another set of law out there that people can have and people can get. And it doesn't make you an attorney, it makes you an advocate. I'm not an attorney. I'll never be an attorney. I don't like courtrooms. I deal with law enforcement. I deal with substantive law. I deal with the substance of the law. Right? That's just what I do. So when you guys ask me to come and help you, I don't do that. I am helping you. But the way I help you is by an advocate doesn't speak for one person. He speaks for all, right? An advocate is one that speaks on behalf of others, particularly in a legal matter. An attorney will take on an individual case. They'll take you through an individual. I'm going to take on the collective, right? And deal with the substantive issue that's associated with the spirit of America. That's what substantive is. Substance means the spirit or the substance of law. Substantive law is the spirit of America's law. We were founded upon truth and justice. That's what's in our heart. That's what we were founded upon. That's what our spirit is. And so when we find ourselves in a situation where we're not living truth or we're not living justice, then our spirit is upset, right? And it is, because we all share that same spirit. And in sharing that same spirit, then when a different spirit comes in, such as the spirit of the judges, that's against us, right? What they do is the opposite of what we do. All these attorneys, they don't believe in truth and justice. They don't believe in the Constitution. They don't believe in freedom, because they're all building a system that's all about removing freedom and profiting off of this industry. They can't do what I'm doing. In order for me to win this, every attorney is going to have to come to terms with the fact that nothing that they've done their entire career or their predecessors have done their entire career has been valid, because they never knew the law. They never knew the law because they decided that they created the law. They decided judges created, right? Not the people. They immediately started undermining the laws that were put into place from the very beginning of that court, because the Constitution declares that all men are to be free. And yet their whole industry is about locking people up, the opposite of what the Constitution does, right? The Constitution is all about peace and harmony amongst 50 regional governments so that we can have, cohesion. Out of many comes one, e pluribus unum, our nation's motto. So we're not 50 autonomous nations. We're actually many coming out of one. We're one nation that's the result of many regional governments coming together to give up their sovereignty in order to subject themselves to the supremacy of the Constitution so that we can have that peace and harmony. But that court immediately started putting in place rulings that undermined the Union, undermined the Constitution. As a result, we're living in a world that is inconsistent with our spirit. Our hearts are all messed up. We're like, what's going on? This is not what we believe in. You're right, it's not, because it's not the world that was promised to us. It's a world that they created, because the Constitution is not the foundation. The whole issue that we're dealing with, every bit of this derives from that Supreme Court. That Supreme Court is going to have to address the crimes that were committed by their agents, right? Taney is not an honorable man. Chief Justice Taney, his court, they were not honorable. They were traitors, and they need to be removed from our history, right? They need to be told for what they were, and we don't want to honor them anymore. We certainly don't want their rulings to be out there and available for people to say that this is the direction that America went. Marshall should not have honor either, because he put into place rulings that are now today, 243 years later, still depriving the people of the United States the very rights that are fundamental to them, that would protect them from arbitrary and capricious arrest and protect the innocent from habeas charges. We don't have that. We've never had that, because Marshall made that decision in 1802. That's not honorable. That's dishonorable. So why is he still being honored? Waite cannot be honored either. He says he's a despicable man. I mean, he made statements on the record that he was going to destroy the 14th Amendment. He's going to undermine it and step aside and intentionally misread the law so he can make it into a charter of enslavement as opposed to a guarantee of rights. These judges, they put in place the foundation. They removed the Constitution and the laws that set free, and they put in its place their rulings. And their rulings are now at the bottom. So if you were to go to a courtroom and go through the process, they're going to be going based upon what judge-made rulings say that they do, not what the Constitution says. If you were to say, oh, my constitutional rights have been violated, they're going to go not to the Constitution, but to some judge-made ruling to determine. So the Constitution is not the foundation. They're judge-made rulings at the foundation. And that's precisely the reason why we live in an arbitrary and capricious world. It's because there's millions and millions of cases out there. People talk about shepherdizing. They don't shepherdize. They just use whatever works for them. I mean, if they have a predetermined outcome and they want you to be guilty and they want to avoid something, they can always find a case that'll do it, right? They can always find a case that'll do it. Sorry, guys, I have a bad infection. So they can always find a way to do it. If we wanted to look at the grand jury, for instance, Constitution says you have to have it. Civil procedure, rules of civil procedure says you have to have it. There's numerous Supreme Court cases that say you have to have it. The 11th Circuit says you have to have it. And yet there's one case from Tanawah, California, that says you don't have to have it. It was after and before a number of these. In fact, there's 1958, it says you have to have it. So a Supreme Court case in 1958, even that recent, says you have to have it in that grand jury. And yet if you go and you challenge it, they'll go to that case, and that's the only case. That's the only thing. They won't cite anything else but that case. Oh, you don't get it because of this. So they'll find whatever predetermined outcome that they want. So I mean, they can say that they shepherdize, but they don't. I mean, they just latch on to whatever makes sense to them so that they can win their case and have that predetermined outcome. That's all it is. But judges, again, judges don't make the law. They do in England. Remember that they do there and under that bar, because in England there's a king, and the king makes laws, and so that king then grants his agents the authority to make law. So when a judge makes a ruling in England, it is case law because they have permission to make the law. They have the authority from the king to make the law. That's not how it works here in America. But we have the English bar that's seeped its way in here. and it's permeated its way in, and now we're living under this English doctrine that does not have any place in America. Case law, precedence has no place within our jurisprudence. Judges do not create law. People do, right? And the judges must make rulings that are consistent with the laws of the people, because they're tethered to positive law here in America. In England, they're not. But yet they brought it in. And so we're living in this world where in England, it's called legal realism because they operate under the king's authority. There's no king here. The people are the king, we're the sovereign, and we delegated authority to the judges, but we did not delegate any legislative authority because the Constitution of the United States, Article 1 says, all legislative power vested in the Congress of the United States, not in the judicial branch. So we delegated, as a king, our power to the legislative branch. We did not delegate it to the judicial. So therefore, the judicial branch has no authority to create law. They have no authority to amend the Constitution of the United States. And yet, that's exactly what they've done. They have breached their delegated authority. They've exceeded it. They've overstepped the separation of powers, decided they were going to legislate from the bench, fundamentally change the guarantees that we gave to us to preserve our individual liberties. And as a result, we are living in a world that is inconsistent with our beliefs, our spirit. But the good news is that if the highest court in the land made that decision in 1833 and made a ruling that today is still denying you a right that's fundamental, then as long as that court is permitting this to continue, as long as they're ignoring this, then nothing that any court in this country does is going to be legal, because that highest court in the land introduced fraud in 1833, and that fraud has never been removed. And remember, fraud is fatal to any action or judgment, fatal. So until the Supreme Court does come out and it directs all of the courts within the purview of the United States that they have to obey the Constitution and act constitutionally, then nothing that any court does is going to be valid once we prove it, right? Because today we live in a world called legal realism, where the law is not based upon a formal set of laws and principles, but instead upon judicial decisions that derive from their own social, political, public policy. Judges are making the law based upon their own social, political, public policy. That's a world that we have to live in, that judges make up, but it's a delusional world, because judges are liars. They create the delusions. They tell us that we have to obey them. They're full of shit, man. So we're living in a world that's the opposite of what we were meant to live in. We were meant to have a government of laws, constitutional foundation. That was what we were supposed to have. And instead, we had a bunch of slave owners, a bunch of judges that came in and early on probably had a lot more power than they do today. And they removed the Constitution. They put into place their rulings as foundation so that they could preserve and protect their property, because justice was going to set all of their slaves free. So that court has to address this, because the truth is, and they know this, the truth is that nothing that any of these courts are going to do is going to be valid until that court stops and removes the fraud and directs all the courts to act in a non-fraudulent manner. Remember, fraud is fatal to any action. So when the Supreme Court of the United States amended the Constitution or directed all of the courts of the country that they don't have to follow it, as of that moment, nothing that any court in the country does is valid, because the highest court in the land told them all that they can act unconstitutionally. This is a huge, huge deal. But it's not a huge deal out here at the edge. It's not about the judges out here at states. It's about that Supreme Court of the United States. That's the only court we have to beat. That's the only one we have to go after. That's the only battle we got to fight. Because when we address their crimes, we address the fraud that they introduced, all this other shit is just gone. And so, guys, that's why I don't call you guys that much, right? That's why I don't respond that much, is because those are distractions. And I'm sorry, but I've got a lot that I'm dealing with, right? I got a lot I'm dealing with, between the road, between travel. There's so much that I have to deal with that I don't have time to be able to go off and spend too much time talking about these other issues that don't matter. They don't. They're actually distractions. They're distractions for you too, and they want you to be distracted. The system, the court, the judges, process, they all want you to be distracted. You don't have to be. If you guys focus even yourselves and say, you know what, whatever we're doing here, it's not even real, right? You don't got to be afraid of a conviction, because that conviction, I can't tell you when, but I can tell you that it will be reversed and voided. And they will never be able to come after you again for whatever it was that they did because of the breach of constitutional violation under the double jeopardy clause. So no matter what they're doing, it all is driving from an unlawful, unconstitutional order made by the highest court in the land that ordered your court that you're going through that they don't have to abide by the Constitution. We can't fight that battle out at the state courts because we got to get the highest court in the land to address their criminality. But once we get them to address their criminality, they will direct all the lower courts to act constitutionally, and that's when you guys will be able to submit a motion to vacate judgment for anything and everything that they ever prosecute, and you'll be able to submit it to the court that rendered the decision. And as of that moment, they will have no choice but to void it because they didn't have jurisdiction. They didn't have the authority to do it because the highest court in the land told them that they don't have to follow the Constitution. So again, you guys, all that I'm doing is I'm drawing a line in the sand. Drawing a line in the sand is what I've done the whole time. And I'm pointing out to all these public officials, you guys, hey, you're over there on the wrong side. You guys are on the wrong side of the law. Here it is. Here's what your obligations are, and you guys are outside them, which means that you guys are unlawful right now. Your actions are unlawful. And anytime government acts unlawfully, what it produces is unlawful. This is the man of lawlessness. You guys familiar with 2 Thessalonians? The man of lawlessness is going to come, and he will set himself up in the temple, claiming to be like God, even claiming to be God, right? It's a great rebellion because we are rebelling once again. So this is the man of lawlessness, because if we are the body of Christ, who is against us? Just as I told them in the last motion, motion that I submitted to the United States Supreme Court. Every single thing that I'm advocating is consistent with God's divine attributes. Release of prisoners, return of exiled captives, love and live hate, compassion, not condemnation, forgiveness instead of vengeance, equity and not tyranny. I know what side I'm on, so ask yourself, if I fight for God and you fight against me, who is it that you're fighting for? See, I know what side I'm on because I know what God's attributes are, and I know that I'm fighting for those attributes. Release the prisoners, turn the exiled captives, right? Remove the yoke of the slaves that work for you. Set the prisoners free. Bring them out into the light. Guys, every single thing that they say is the exact opposite of what God demands, right? God says your sins are forgiven. They say, oh no, you're gonna be a felon forever, right? God says let their slaves go free. They say, oh no, they're our property, right? God says, be fair and equitable. They say, oh no, we make the law and not the people. They're the exact opposite of what God demands, and yet we call them good. We call them honorable. We allow them to lead us. And you gotta look at actions, and you gotta say that's not what they are. That's not a good thing. I mean, even Scripture says that in the end of times that the good will be called evil and evil will be called good. I mean, we have to get the people now to understand that what they believe in is not real. That's the key here. Like that's what we have to figure out, how to break through this glass ceiling to make the people see that what you fucking believe in is not real. And we can do that. We can do that with the work that we've done, right? We went out, and guys, I have served 37 state attorney generals. They did nothing. Nothing. Despite the crimes that are right there in their face. Nothing. I went to 37 state Supreme Courts, the judges, right? Showed them the crimes that are being committed. They did nothing. Nothing at all. They did nothing. I went to the United States Attorney General, served on him, told him all of these judges and prosecutors all across the country are committing these crimes. He did nothing. Absolutely nothing. I went to 100 United States senators, informed their agents that this was happening. Nothing. They won't even schedule a meeting with me. I went to 250 congressmen here, informed them. Nothing. Nothing at all. Not one word. No one would schedule a meeting with me. So I've informed the president 3 separate times. Nothing. So, when you're informed of a crime that's being committed and you fail to take action, then you may as well be the very person pulling the trigger because you knew about it and you permitted it to continue. That's the whole theory behind criminal conspiracy. All of these public officials are all well aware that these judges and prosecutors are committing treason, disobeying the law, and that's because their leadership is directing them to do it. Supreme Court of the United States is directing all the courts in the country that they don't have to follow the Constitution. So who's the real problem? Would be that court right there, right? But that court right now is believed to be good by 330 million Americans. We got to make those 330 million Americans see them for what they actually are. because they were traitors. And all judges in the country, they're being permitted to be traitors because they're being directed to by their management, being permitted to do it. So our fight is against those 9 justices. It was always against those 9 justices. But we had to bring and build this thing that can show that, hey, none of these fucking public officials are obeying the Constitution, not one of them. And that's a big deal, man. And the people of the United States, they're going to be on our side, guys. They're going to be on our side. They don't know it yet, but they're going to be on our side. Just like I said, I got 2.9 million people standing behind me, 2.9 million prisoners, right? That were people that had rights that were taken by these 40,000 criminals standing in front of me, traitors standing in front of me, the judges. Well, it's not just 2.9 million. Those 330 million people, when they find out that their agents are committing treason, they're not going to be standing behind the traitors. They're not going to be on their side. They're going to switch over this side. They're not going to permit their agents to undermine the Constitution of the United States. They won't do it. And so, but we got to make them aware of it, because the only reason why the judges are doing what they do is because the people are permitting them to do it, because the people still believe that those judges and prosecutors are good. They're honorable. They make the right decision because they're so fucking equitable and fair. That's what they believe. But they're not. You guys know that. We have the proof that they're not, right? We have consistent, ever since 1833, we've got every single judge in the whole country that's ever been a judge, all failing to follow the Constitution of the United States. That, people don't know that. Do you think that people would be all right with that if they knew that? No. I mean, I just did this podcast just the other day with Tim's teaching. That podcast that I did the other day, he was a former law enforcement officer, retired law enforcement out of Oregon. And he had no clue that Washington, just on the other side of the river, didn't do grand juries. Oregon did, sort of, but Washington didn't. He was like, how is Washington doing that? You have to, it's the Constitution. I know it is. That's a great question. That's what we're trying to get figured out here. Why doesn't Washington and Connecticut and Oklahoma and Michigan, why don't they do it? Why does Oklahoma permit their prosecutors to do it by discretion? These are good, valid questions. Because what purpose was the Constitution if the states weren't bound to obey it? Right? And this is one thing that all of you should also know and push as much as you can, is that these congressmen, United States congressmen, United States senators, these judges, you know what? The only reason why the judicial branch exists is because of the Constitution, because of Article 3. So if these justices, Supreme Court justices, if they're not willing to step up to direct to all of the states to obey Article 3, then Article 3 doesn't exist anymore. They don't exist anymore, right? If they don't step up and assert their supremacy, then they have relinquished their power to the states, and they permit the states to become more powerful than them. Same thing with Congress. If these congressmen and senators, if they don't step up and defend Article 1, Article 1 doesn't exist anymore. Well, there's no capital here. There's no power. None of them have power. None of them have anything, because they will have relinquished their power to the state's authority and thus destroyed their own institution. The only reason why DC exists is because of Articles 1, 2, and 3. So if we can't find someone within Articles 1, 2, and 3, President, Supreme Court, Congress, if we can't find someone to step up and defend the Constitution of the United States, then by their failure to defend it, they will have destroyed it. And then they're nothing. So these justices, they got to understand that your silence is destroying you and your institution. It's destroying Article 3, because if you're not going to defend Article 3, and these courts say, well, we can breach Article 3, state courts are more powerful than you are, Supreme Court, and then we don't need you. You're nothing. That means all the rulings that you made, it's all just gone. And that's why I don't think that they will ultimately make the decision. But to answer your question, I don't know when. I'm doing what I can. Out here to do this in the least destructive manner. I knew going into this, you guys, that this had to be the least destructive. I knew it was going to take time. I knew that I had to get them to self-reflect, because that was the only way that I could do this where lives weren't going to be lost. I had to build something big enough that I could get the attention of the court, of the justices. I had to get dossiers done on me. I had to do so that they felt that I was a threat, right? Secret Service and FBI both have dossiers on me. They've done, they think I'm a threat. That's good. Think I'm a threat. Because if you think I'm a threat, then that means you're going to be watching my videos, you're going to be reading my paperwork, and that means that they're going to be too, right? I want you guys. I want them to hear about it. I want them to listen to me, right? I don't want them, even if you're listening to me in private, ultimately the words I'm saying is pointed at them, at Roberts and Thomas and Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, all the Supreme Court justices. It's focused on them. I'm talking about the crimes. They're all the source of all the criminality here in America. They don't like hearing that because they think they're honorable. They think that they're the moral leaders of our country, and yet they're just a bunch of pieces of shit with no backbone and no spine that are unwilling to even defend their own job because they have no honor and no integrity. But so I'm focused on them. These words that I say is to get them and to trigger them, because they can't do anything to me, because if they did, they would bring attention to the issue. So I have the power to speak these words, and they can't even defend themselves against it, because that would bring attention to it. So this toxic energy that I'm giving to them through the truth, they have to live with that truth, and they can't even get rid of it. They can't even counter me. I mean, what's the best they can do? Come on here and talk a bunch of shit about? Whatever, man. I mean, I know where I'm going. I know the destination. I know how I'm gonna get there. You guys can talk shit about me all you want, but I know what's gonna happen. I'm gonna be successful here. So that's why, knowing the destination, knowing where I'm going, and having that firm faith that knowing that I'm going to get there, that means that good and bad things are going to have to happen. That means that some people won't see everything. They'll just see limited. That means that not everybody will have the same faith that I have, but my faith is enough to get me there. And that means I'll get everybody there, right? Even the ones that don't believe, they're gonna get there too. Which is why, again, if you come in with negativity on me, if you start coming with negativity, you're gone. And I'm sorry. I don't have time for that, because I only have limited energy throughout the day. I mean, I only have so much that I can do. I mean, I'm trying to keep hope up for all of these people, and it's tough on me, man. It's tough, especially when I don't have support, especially when I have people that are that are undermining, especially when I don't have money, or these things are all detracting from my power to be able to solve this problem. And so when people come in with negativity, they're gone, man. I can't fucking deal with it, because that negativity, I can't counter it. Right? Because if I did, I'd be detracting too much of my energy from it, or to deal with it. So that's the way that I have to deal with my life here. That's why I also don't contact a lot of you back, because a lot of you are telling me your stories, and your stories are horrendous, man. And I can't do anything to help your story, because I have to stick with the collective. I can only fight for all. That's where my power is at, not for one. You guys want me to come and fight in your individual case, and I can't. I can't, because that is going to detract from the efforts. I can win for everybody just as much as I can win for one person, because the argument for everybody is the same that I would use for the one person. So I don't come down into the individual cases, and I'm sorry, we're going to tell your story, but first things first, we got to establish the duty. We got to tell a story about their criminality, about that court's criminality. Once we establish the duty, once we show that the court had a job or a duty, an obligation, and they failed to do it, then you guys are going to be able to tell your story through your injunctive relief, because you're all going to be made whole again from the crimes that committed against you, from the things they did, the deprivation of rights in the color of law, without lawful authority, the things they did to you and your family. We're going to restore that liberty, give you guys the Constitution that you guys were always meant to have, and that you were never given because a bunch of slave owners decided that they wanted to keep your family in a state of oppression. So I can fight this effectively for the collective, but I can't individually. I can't. And I did this also, like when I've talked to tens of thousands of prisoners, tens of thousands. I've never met one that I don't like. I mean, yeah, they do bad things, or they've done bad things, but that's not bad to me. So I don't allow anybody to tell me about their past. I don't want to know about your past. I don't want to know what someone else made you. I want to know about you. And so in doing this, everybody comes in equal footing with me, right? I'm not above them because they're equal. I mean, I don't even know anything about them. So how could I put myself into a different classification or put myself above them if they're coming in equal to me? Anything that I have is it's unique to me, but it's not. It doesn't make me better. But the problem is that when a person comes in and they tell me about their history, they tell me about what the prosecutor made or what the judge made. When they come in, they do that. Sometimes I will feel myself going, "Oh, man, you did that!" Like, "Oh, geez," and it makes me as a human, it makes me feel like I'm above them. I don't want that. We all are at equal footing, and we gotta learn how to do that, and we do that by we don't listen to what someone else tells us about someone. If someone comes in and talking shit about someone else, that has nothing to do with me. That has no bearing on me. If a woman was with another man, as far as I'm concerned, she's a virgin, right? Because that was something else. It has nothing to do with me, right? If a person was a robber over here, that doesn't mean he's a robber with me. The people that I meet, I like because I get to know them without the history that was created by the system. Right? It's just that's the way that we're able to keep this at an equal footing, at an equal level. We want to be able to look at everybody without being in an elevated position because our society was supposed to be egalitarianism, which is all men are equal. We were not supposed to have a classification systems, a classification society, but that's what was created by our founders and forefathers when they refused to give up their property. They created a classification of men that were below them. They had themselves elevated up, and they didn't make the station egalitarianism. So Plato wrote in the book The Republic. He wrote about the theory of justice, or the origin of justice. It goes kind of like this. He says that good and bad are both evil. Good is to commit injustice. Bad is to suffer injustice. Now, commit injustice would be to accuse another of wrongdoing. Okay, so that would be to commit injustice. Now, the reason why that's evil is because if evil was paid to you and you respond to evil by accusing someone of wrongdoing and demanding that they go and pay for the things they've done, all you're doing is bringing more evil into the world. Good is incapable of such an act because only evil can produce evil. Good is incapable. So as a result, if you are bringing evil into the world because you're responding with evil, then that means that you yourself are evil. So good and bad are both evil, right? Good is to suffer injustice. Bad is to commit injustice. And so what happens is that in a society, before justice arises, then what happens is that it just keeps on paying back for it. It's just this pendulum. So one person will accuse another of wrongdoing. That person will suffer for the wrongdoing. And then they'll step up and they'll accuse another of wrongdoing, and that person will suffer for their wrongdoing. It just keeps going back and forth, back and forth. Nothing's actually solved because everybody's just like, they're either suffering or committing injustice. There's nothing in between. There's no peace in harmony because everybody's just accusing another of doing wrong. And this goes on and on and on until eventually what happens is that they come together and they say, you know what? I don't think we need either one of these, right? Because having suffered injustice and not being able to avoid it, and having committed injustice and being the one responsible for it, they're like, you know what? Let's just have nothing. Let's come to equal ground. Let's stand at equal footing, and let's say, you know what? We're just going to forgive everything because we don't want to be doing this back and forth. And there arises justice. Justice is equally concerned about both parties because justice is about reconciliation. Justice is about taking feuding issues and resolving those feuding issues so we don't have feuding anymore, right? Justice is about healing the monster so that the monster doesn't exist, so the person it comes back, right? Justice is about morality and leading us in a good direction because we have honorable people that serve her, right? Instead of criminals. See, justice is not at all what we see today. Because this justice is injustice. It's one-sided, solely one-sided, to profit off of the business. That's not justice. So, if we want to fix this, I'm bringing everybody up to an equal level, because all these slaves that were in the lower class, they're not even in the lower class anymore because it was unconstitutional what was done. They get to meet us at the equal level, right? They get to meet us at the same. We're bringing them all back up. There's no more slaves because all those slave contracts were all unconstitutional. They're all void now. So we're going to meet everybody here at one level, and now we're asking the prosecutors and judges to meet us at the same level, right? Come to our level, right? Because you guys, if you don't, then we're just gonna have to switch one timer for another, so all the slaves are gonna get out, but we're gonna put all of you in there, and you can choose to do the right thing, the honorable thing, and meet us at this level and obey the law, or if you remain on the outside of that law, then you're gonna be known as criminals, and we're gonna make sure that everybody knows that you're nothing but a bunch of piece of shit criminals. Every single one of you, every single one of them, because they've all been informed, they've all been told that what you guys are doing is criminal, and yet you've chosen to continue to proceed in that criminality. You didn't do anything at all to fix or to mitigate your criminal. You guys just chose to continue to do it, day after day after day. Continue to enslave people illegally, continue to breach the one thing that you were obligated to preserve and protect. So, as we draw the line in the sand, we're all on the lawful side because the Constitution was here to protect us. That was our weapon, not theirs. We're removing the bullshit that they had, so that it was once again our weapon. Okay, that's what we use against them. So it creates the obligations. When they breach their obligations, that means they broke the law, and there is absolutely no excuse for breaking the law. No ignorance, no nothing. Right? And when they break the law, punishment as prescribed by law is death. So, scripture again, like if God said don't eat the fruit of that tree or you will almost certainly die, judges and prosecutors need to understand that when you eat the fruit of treason, the punishment is death. And we are morally justified in any action we take to remove traitors from a position of authority because they are not honorable. There's no honor in that. And that's what we want to avoid because that right there is going to be very, very messy. And that's why this is so slow. This is why I'm not in control of this. This is why I'm appealing to them, because the whole question is going back to Alexander Hamilton in the Federalist #1. Alexander Hamilton said that the purpose of our experiment, the American experiment. He said, "Are constitutions government forever destined to be at the end of a sword, or can we reach good government through self-reflection?" That's the question. Are we going to have to reestablish our constitutional government at the end of a sword, or can we get government to self-reflect and reach good government through that self-reflection? That's the question. And I know it's taken a long time, but we don't have control over those. We don't know how far into apostasy they've gone. But clearly, they're not serving anything good. Clearly, the only thing they care about is money. And clearly, they don't have any problem with hurting the people of the United States and destroying, what they were obligated to preserve and protect. If that's what they want to do, then we got our answer. And it'll be at the end of the sword. And I'll be the first to be up there with the rest of my brothers who served to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all means foreign and domestic. But I'm praying that we don't have to go that way. I'm praying because that's going to cost some lives. And I think the people of the United States have lost enough, especially with these douchebags up here. They should wake up pretty quick and just realize that they don't stand a chance against us. Once we come together, they don't stand a chance against the 2.9 million prisoners alone, because those guys are going to come out pretty pissed off, especially when they realize that their whole life has been a fraud. The whole institution that's taken and enslaved their family for hundreds of years is all fraud, and none of them ever had the authority to do it. I think they're going to be pretty pissed off. I wouldn't want to fuck with them personally, because the warriors for our country, they don't really walk around in suits. They walk around in orange jumpsuits, man. And they have their hands together because God teaches them in the place of faith to hold your hands together. I wouldn't fuck with them. So, so will this help even if you took a plea or you already served time? Yes, it will. Because your plea happened after the arrest, guys. The only thing we're worried about is the arrest. When you ask me about evidence procedures or biased judges or, none of that matters, man. The only thing that matters is, did they have an indictment by a grand jury when they arrested you? No. Awesome. Then nothing after that is valid. Because of the unconstitutional act that occurred at the beginning of the process at the arrest means that everything is unconstitutional. If government breaks the law in the pursuance, the moment that they do, everything after it is unconstitutional because it's all tainted by the illegality of the way it was obtained. So if government broke the law, acted unconstitutionally because they did not do what was necessary for the arrest, then we don't care about a plea. We don't care about whether or not you served your time because none of it is valid. Your time that you served was your service to the country. Thank you for your service, right? But that service to the country, it was all a delusion, because you didn't have to go there, because they didn't have the authority to send you there. They didn't have the authority to create the judgment. None of it's valid. You guys are not negotiating a contract for your plea. They can't impose statutory limitations on it and say, oh, well, you can't remove your plea, because the plea is after the arrest. That's why we're not appealing. You don't want to appeal. Appeal is a claims processing relief. You're going to the end and you're saying, here, I'm going to collaterally attack the judgment. There's no judgment. Go to the beginning. Go to the rest. That's the habeas. That's why we're at the beginning. We challenge the arrest, and if we win with the challenge of the arrest because there was not lawful authority, constitutional authority to perform the arrest, nothing after the arrest is valid. The judgment doesn't exist. It's void. So yes, this will absolutely address all those. What's it going to mean? I don't know. I know what will have to happen is they will have to void the judgment. Whatever judgment, they will have to restore your liberty back to the point of the arrest. They will have to give you your life back, your rights back, everything back to the point of the arrest, and let you then go out and live your life consistent with your own choices and not the choices that someone else made for you that changed the trajectory of your life. Someone breached their constitutional obligation, and that changed the trajectory of your life. You're not living the life that God created for you. You're not living the life that you chose. You are living the life that someone else chose for you when they broke the law to put you there. So we want to give you back your life, take you back to that beginning and say, okay, here, go live your life now. Because I think personally that I think the majority of those people that are there, just like the sinner and the Pharisee in the temple, remember? So, the sinner, he can't even look up. Like he's so thankful that because he knows he's a sinner. But then this Pharisee, this judge, he said, they're going, at least I'm not this guy right here, right? That dude didn't even know. I mean, he's a piece of shit. These judges don't even know that they're criminals, that they're felons. They're every single day they're committing crimes and they're punishable by death. These men that are in prison, they know what they had to lose. They know it because they've experienced it, right? They've experienced it. But when you give these men and women, when you give them hope that they will be equal, that the laws and justice will apply not just to the rich but to them as well, and that they'll have an opportunity to be able to go out and live a life and be free and have a career that without limitations placed on it. When you give them that hope, they change. I've seen it personally. I have. I've seen entire prisons stop fighting. I've seen Northsiders and Southsiders come together and say, we don't need to beef anymore, because if we beef, then we don't get the freedom, right? Because there's nothing to fight about, right? We have the right to be free, and it's the lack of freedom. It's the scarcity. It's all this bullshit that they try to teach us that's causing us to lose our freedom. Listen, these guys will change, and they will. I don't think that they will reincriminate. I don't. But I guess that's to be seen. They're only going to get one chance with God here, right? God's going to have mass forgiveness of sins. He's going to deliver this jubilee for us. Once we have it, I don't think we'll ever see it again, right? Certainly not in our lifetime. But that being said, if we have mass forgiveness of sins, if we bring everybody up to an equal level, if we start out where we should have been 243 years ago, where all men are respected, then you know what? I don't think we're going to have anywhere near as much problems as we do, because the reason why people fight with each other or kill each other is because of lack of respect. If we could show respect for all people, because now we're all at equal level, garbage man is no worse than the president, because the president can't do his job without the garbage man taking out his trash. That doesn't make the garbage man less. It makes him equally as important in our society. And so when we start to see, the importance of every single person and the benefit and value that they provide in service to our country, every single person has got a part of it, right? And when we start to value that, then I think we're going to see a lot of this conflict go down. It's going to go away, because we're gonna have respect for each other. We're going to come in an equal level, right? I'm not above anybody else. He's equal to me, because I'm not looking at his past, because I don't want to see what someone else says he is, because that's someone else's opinion. I can develop my own opinion. I'm completely capable of that. So once I do develop my own opinion, then God, they're equal to me. They're equal. And if we're equal, then there's no need to be above them. I don't have to feel that way. I don't like feeling that way anyway. So this will help, all right? If you've already served your time, it will absolutely help, okay? If you have taken a plea, it will absolutely help. All that we're doing is we're saying there was a constitutional violation that existed right here. And we're going to take you back to that point in which government broke the law, breached the Constitution. We're going to take you back to that point, and we're going to give you the opportunity to live your life that God chose for you based upon your own choices. And if you end up in a criminal state after that, that's because of your choices, not because of government creating them for you. Now, again, if you have multiple convictions, right? We're going to the beginning. The very first time is the moment that your life, the trajectory of your life was changed based upon someone else's breaking of the law against you. So, we can say that maybe you would have been a criminal. Let's say that you had a robbery at the beginning, and then you had 3 or 4 robberies after that. Now you're looking at like 5 or 6 different crimes. But here's the problem. You were living your life, going along, right? And maybe you did commit that first robbery. But government broke the law in order to secure that conviction and thus deprive you of your liberty, which changed the trajectory of your life. You're not living the life that you chose. Now you're living the life that someone else chose for you because of the crime that they committed against you. So the path that you're on now is not the path that you chose. It's the path that they chose. And so the next robbery, we can't say that you wouldn't have committed a robbery, but what we can say is that you wouldn't have committed that one, because that one was the result of the trajectory that they put you on. So everything that happens after that, your drug addictions, your all of that is a result of the life that someone else chose for you. All of that has to fall, because we can't say that you weren't going to be a robber, but what we can say is you wouldn't have been that robber, because that robber is on the life that and the trajectory that someone else chose for you as a result of the crime that they committed. So, and guys, this is an all or nothing situation. Well, we can't pick and choose. So we can't point and say, okay, this guy over here, look at his crime, right? We got to keep that, because the whole point here is we're going to rip the slavery institution out from its foundation. We're going to rip the whole fucking thing out. We're not going to leave any roots in. We're not going to leave anything, because that's the only way we're going to make it go away forever. We're going to rip the whole thing out. There cannot be one single slave left in the state of enslavement here in America. We must bring every single one up. That means even the worst of the worst of the worst. But again, you guys, I'm not saying that we're going to let dangerous people go free. I'm not saying that. I would never advocate for that. But what we have to do is we're going to have to do an assessment. They're going to have to do an assessment. And they're going to have to determine who is or is not actually a dangerous society. And what we're going to find is that the vast majority, are not a dangerous society. 78% of the people in prison are there because of drug-related offenses. That means they didn't hurt anybody but themselves. Those are people that just need to go to a place to get healed from the hurt that is causing them to want to do those drugs, right? Then of the rest, only 4% of the remaining is actually danger. The rest of them are property crimes. Property crimes, we just need to get them some property so that they don't need to steal from someone else, right? So stop living in a world of scarcity, because we have plenty of stuff. Let's help these people. Let's give them the things they need so they don't have to go out and steal, and let's help them, because that's the purpose of our government. Not to make it and to limit their ability to go out, so that you can create the environment and send them off to prison. That's not the best interest of the people. And so government, if you're not going to help these people out, then you're the cause of these crimes. So property crimes, that's not something that you lock someone up for. That's a situation where you want to help them value and appreciate the property of someone else. That's leadership. It's not fucking punitive. So only 4% of our prison population are really a dangerous society. We're not saying let those people go free. What I'm saying is we have to remove the judgment. Their conviction is unconstitutional. It is, period. We can't even keep them in a judgment that's unconstitutional. But what we can do is, if they're a danger to society, we can switch them from a criminal incapacitation to a civil incapacitation, okay? And we can shift them into a hospital setting. Right? We can switch them into a place where we can actually have doctors that will heal the trauma that's been inflicted upon them. We can switch from the Attorney General having control of the system and move it over to Health and Human Services. That's where it needs to be, because the issue of morality is not a matter of punitive. It's not a matter of punishment. It is a matter of public health, and we have plenty of nations that we can look to as the examples for how to fix this issue of criminality here in America. But it's going to start with, first off, removal of all slave status. Businesses, corporations, they're not going to have any fucking hands or ties into this industry, because this is not a business. Justice is not, it's not something that we're going to run as though it's just, no, you guys got contracts, get rid of your contracts because justice is a concern about both the accused and the accused. It's about healing these people, right? Because what we created here in America was the Church of Justice. Because what is a church? A church is a place that sinners go to heal, right? Right? Sinners go to, well, here in America, when we have sinners, we send them to justice to heal. That was the church that was created by our founders, right? That was the place where we would send them to heal them. But in the hands of man, this church has been made into a den of robbers and thieves, right? This is not what was conceived. This is not a place of healing. This is a place of torment. This is a place of harm. It's going to increase it. This is not what was meant to be. That's a place where we would send people to help them in their spiritual development. It's a faith-based location where we would heal the hurting and the trauma was inflicted upon them. That was what our founders created. That was what they envisioned. Whether or not they put it into place, irrelevant. That's what it is, and that's what we need to be moving toward. That's why my remedy is all about faith-based education programs that we're going to make education free. Whatever they want to be, right? Because we can do that. We can do that with the facilities we already have. We can do that with the money we already have. We can do this. We can make these people into what they want to be. We can make them happy. And you know what? We would actually get money back by doing that, because the money that we're spending right now on these people going to prison, it far exceeds the amount of money that it would cost to convert these prisons into education facilities and send those people there to give them a life instead of sending them there to give them death. Because if we can take the poor and we can educate the poor, the whole country's going to come up together. And who wouldn't want that, right? Instead of going to an institution that does nobody any good except for judges and prosecutors, because they're making a ton of money off of this institution, then let's build something that's going to benefit everybody: the taxpayers, the victim, the perpetrator, right? Everybody. Because instead of having a person that's hurting that is now just a monster, and we're just gonna make the monster continue to be a monster, so that when he gets out, he's gonna go and do some monster things, right? Instead of doing that, we're gonna heal the trauma that created the monster, so the monster doesn't exist. And then guess what? That person that was a monster before that was hurting, they're gonna be happy, and happy people don't need drugs. They're gonna be happy, and happy people don't commit crimes. They're gonna be happy because they're out earning money and living a life, being happy. Instead of, being in a system that's going to say you're nothing but a piece of shit. No, the piece of shit is the result of the institution. The institution needs to own up to what it's done and what it's caused here. This is not what the American people envisioned. This is not what we wanted. This is not what we constructed, and this is not what we're going to permit anymore. Certainly not from them. The very ones that we put into place to protect and defend it, and yet they've undermined it and almost destroyed it. So, that's what it was meant to be. That's what we want, and our laws permit us to be able to do that, to take it back, if that's what's necessary. So I still think that we're going to find an honorable person in that court. If you guys ask me, what's the next step? I'm going to say to you, I don't have a next step, guys. I don't live in a world where there's a plan B. Because if there's a plan B, then that means plan A is not going to work. I don't know. Why would I be doing something if I didn't believe it was going to work? Nobody's going to be out here doing this shit I'm doing, living the life I'm living, giving up and sacrificing the things I've sacrificed if I didn't believe in it. And if I need a plan B, then why the fuck am I even working on plan A? Just go plan B now. Plan A is not going to work, then there is no other plan, guys. This is what God put in my heart from the very beginning: appeal to good nature and get one of them to come across. That's been it. If it doesn't work, I'll be happy to be a fool. I'll be happy to be a fool. I'll be happy to say my faith is a bunch of bullshit. But you know what? I'm not there. I believe it, and I believe it's at any moment. Like I believe that it's any moment for a year. Every day I wake up and just anticipate: is today going to be the day that Thomas is going to sign this shit? Because we're that close, man. We've been through the courts. We've been through the same. We've got dossiers. They know every single thing that they need to know about this. And it's just a matter of one of them just saying, you know what, I'm going to sign it. Because any one of the 9 justices can sign the writ. Any one of them could do that. And there would be no fight. It would be over. They could do it that quick. that quick. And that keeps everybody safe. That keeps the prisoners from dying. It keeps us from having to go to battle. All we got to do is just attack them with our words. Thomas is a piece of fucking shit today, man. He is. He said all kinds of things that he wanted to do in his career, none of which he did. So he's kind of a fraud. But man, Thomas could retire and get his name back. He could save his people. He could remove the slavery institute. He has the ability to do that right now. And all he has to do is just sign one writ. Say, hey, judges across the country, you have to obey the Constitution. One justice has the power to do that. And Thomas could, he could be done now. He could retire and be the hero. And I would welcome him to be the hero. Because I'm tired. I'm done. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to do this. But it doesn't have to be Thomas. It could be Sotomayor because again, I'm hoping that I can get money tonight. We'll hit that in a moment. But, I'm hoping to be down in Texas tomorrow. And, I'm going to be hitting those Hispanic news stations. And I'm going to be, telling the Hispanic population about Sotomayor and her desire to lock up her own people, because she runs that institution and there's a massive overpopulation of her own people within the prison system. That doesn't seem like she really cares a lot about them. So, I think that they should know that, this leader that, we got a Hispanic, she really doesn't care about you because she's responsible for all of these, all your family members being in prison down here and a massive overrated population. So, we're going to be telling that story. So Sotomayor, she might want to head this off. She might want to fix this problem because if she is what she says she is, if she is, a proud Hispanic woman that, cares about her culture or her people, then why aren't you signing the fucking writ then? Because it only requires one signature. You could be the justice to do it. You could set your people free. It's the right thing to do. Following the law is always right. It will never be wrong. So, to say, oh, well, if I sign this and let these prisoners go, well, you don't have to do that, but you do have to resolve it. You have to take care of it. So, she could be the one. She could be the hero. Same thing with Brown. Same thing with Gorsuch. Hell, Gorsuch wrote a book. Gorsuch should probably sign it just to keep himself safe. Because you know what, Gorsuch? You're a dumbass, man. You fucking wrote a book and you said that all these things are valid and you're telling the whole country that they're valid. And then that's admission, dude. You have admitted that your institution has directed all of them to do things wrong, and yet you're not doing anything about it, man. You wrote a book and you admitted, but by that admission, that's misprision of treason, man. If you cover up someone else's treason, if you don't report someone else's treason, you yourself are committing treason, man. And you wrote it in a book. You gave it to the whole country. Everybody can read your book that says, oh yeah, judges are all not following the Constitution. Fuck, I would probably sign the writ if I were you. Because if you don't, then at least the other 8 didn't admit it. You did. So we got a lot of different paths here, guys. We got a lot we can do. So we done habeas versus appeal. All right. Paid, no. What do we do if this doesn't work? No, we've already done that. Judges avoid. Okay, guys. So another thing is I'm sorry that I'm not. I don't contact you guys that much, guys. I'm doing this by myself, man. When Plessy versus Ferguson was overturned by Brown versus Board of Education, the NAACP had a whole army of fucking attorneys doing that, guys. This is me. There's nobody else, man. It's me, and it takes a lot to do this. It takes a lot to stay focused. It takes a lot to deal with spirit, especially when I'm out here, doing this because it's stressful when you don't have money. It's stressful when you don't have money. It's stressful when you don't have a car. It's stressful when you don't have a place to stay. But I have to do this because this is how power is created. So power is a product of action. Without action, there is no power. So if you want to accomplish the impossible, what you have to do is you have to put yourself into an impossible situation, one that you can't get out of, right? And so then what has to happen is you either have to learn to live or die. right? You have to learn how to swim faster. You have to learn how to read. You have to do these things in order to win, because you put yourself into a situation that you won't be able to get out of. So when I stepped off and I said, I'm going to do this, and I permitted myself to fall, I either die or I win, right? I had to learn how to swim because I stepped off into the unknown. I permitted myself to go into a place that I either live or die. This is either the life that I'm now going to be known as, or I'm going to take my life back because what they did to me was wrong. What they did to you is wrong. So I stepped into a place that I didn't know, but I stepped in there so I could learn to run faster, to swim harder, to fight, and I beat all them, right? And you guys can too. These attorneys, they don't practice law. We do. We practice law, right? All they do is use threats of intimidation, right? All they use is fear. That's not going to work in a courtroom against me with the emotion, right? That's not going to work with me on the law. All they're going to be able to say is hey, if we were to, all they're going to be able to say is hey, if this happens, look at all these prisoners that are going to go free. Look at how dangerous that's going to be. But that's not going to be a valid argument, because if that's the argument that they take, then great. The people didn't cause this. You did. So you can't tell us that this is too big of a deal, that it's okay for you to break the law to justify what you've done. No. You broke the law. You did this. And so you can't justify, where we're at today to justify your breaking of the law. The people didn't make this decision. The people weren't all right with this. They did it. So when they say, oh, well, this is too big of a deal. 2.9 million people, we can't do this because it's just too big. No, you guys caused it, government. It's your fault. So you can't say that where we're at today is too big because in order to justify having to fix the problem that you made. No, you made the problem, but you got to fix it. So that argument won't work. But the reason why they do that is because, once again, when you're a narcissist, what you do is you project, right? So you try to get the attention off of you. So all they're doing is they're trying to justify their acts by creating some reason for it, right? Oh, well, if we don't do this, look at, all these people are going to go free here. If we don't do this, look at these children that are going to remain in an abusive house. Or you can't justify your criminal act in any way in order to justify, what you've done. So, if you were to say, oh, well, if we don't do it this way, look at all these criminals that'll go free. Our system is designed for criminals to go free if you don't have enough evidence, right? So, that's not, you cannot justify your crime by making an excuse for it, because that by failing to follow the law, you have breached law, you transgressed the law. And if you transgress the law, you're a criminal. And criminals cannot be leaders. So, if you're going to be leading our country, then you must be above the law. You must obey it. And you cannot justify criminal acts in order to get out of it. So juror lex sed lex, it's law, but it's hard. That's why we're going to take a very, very hard-nosed approach on this. We will not compromise on the law. If the law says that you cannot be held to answer for a capital or otherwise heinous crime unless I'm presented on a grand jury, that means that there's no instances whatsoever that anybody can ever hold you over without having an indictment by grand jury first. Because that's what it says. Cannot do it. It doesn't matter who they are, it doesn't matter what color they are, what age they are, what sex they are. You can't do it. If you do it, then you have acted unconstitutionally. Same thing with children, right? If it's incorporated that you have the right to an intimate association with your family without governmental interference, as it was determined in 1984 by the Supreme Court, Roberts versus United States, if that's what it is, then guess what? No state can ever interfere with your family unit, period. There's no instance ever whatsoever that they can do it. Now, if we want to talk about that, if we want to make certain conditions, like maybe an abusive family or abusive parents, maybe we do need to talk about that. But if it's written in the Constitution and it says, and it creates the obligation, that obligation applies to everybody. Everybody. You cannot interfere with anybody's familial unit, because that's what law states. Civil right applies to every single person equally. So if you can remove a civil right from one person, you can remove it from all people. And that doesn't make it civil right. That makes it oppression, because oppression is the unequal application of laws. So when you allow the laws to apply unequally amongst different parts of society, that is oppression. And we do not live in a society where oppression exists. Our laws apply equally to every single person, regardless of who they are, what color they are, what sex they are, what age they are. It applies equally. So you may not ever, ever, ever take away from one, because now you've taken our Constitution, which was meant to be equal, apply equally, and you've now made it a weapon of oppression through your tyrannical acts. So I do not have an army of attorneys behind me, guys. I don't have. So I am very slow on responding, and a lot of that has to do with just simply the fact that every day I have to stick with spirit, because when I'm out here on the road, it sucks because I'm always having to look for where the path is going to open up. Like right now, I don't know where I'm going to be going tomorrow, but I have to go somewhere. Have to. But I'm going to pray that by tomorrow morning something is going to open up, and that's good for me, right? Because that keeps me from making mistakes. I'm thankful for being out here and not having the resources that I need so that I can go and do whatever I want to do, because I think that's the right thing. No, I don't want to mess up. This is too big of a deal. I don't want to mess up. So, the fact that I don't have money right now, that I don't have a path right now, that I don't have a vehicle right now, those things, that's keeping me in a limited state so that I cannot do something until God permits it to happen. And when he does, then at that point in time, then I know that that's the right thing to do. So I can't mess up. And it's very stressful. And add to that, the fact that I got this infection here and they're blowing out black grain funk. But, tomorrow I got to go somewhere. So I'm going to leave you with this, that I'm really sorry that people have set up accounts and that there's douchebags out here that are fucking stealing from you and stealing from the little resources that we need to be able to accomplish this. I don't need much, but these assholes are stealing from what little we actually have to make this happen. And that's fucked up, man. And God help them, because it's just not going to go good for them. But nonetheless, I can't do anything, guys. I can't go anywhere without help. I can't do anything without help. And tomorrow morning, if I found a car of someone that has an Uber, a ride share. There's only like 5 ride share people in this whole fucking city. No cab, no bus, no train. No. I've been here almost for a week, guys, and I have no way out, right? So tomorrow morning at 8:30, there is a guy that does Uber somewhere, and he'll come down and he'll pick me up and he'll take me out to Ardmore, where I'll be able to get on the train, and I'll finally be able to get out of here. But as of this moment, what money I did have has gone to hotels. What money I did have has gone to, whatever. And tomorrow morning, it's going to cost $100 if I'm going to ride with this guy. If I don't, I'm fully prepared to go to the truck stop and hitchhike out of here if that's what I have to do. But you guys can help me help you by keeping my focus and energy on this task. That's why I don't descend into issues, is because you guys want as much of my attention on this issue and not on these tertiary issues. That's why I don't go into a state and fight that case, because if I did, that would be a distraction. You guys want me up here, focused on overcoming this. So we're on a path. Tomorrow, I hope to regain that path and to make it into Dallas, where I'm going to go knock on Telemundo and Univision's doors and try to talk to their producers, tell them exactly what's going on, and see if I can't entice them to run a segment. Run just one, 3.5 minutes. It's very easy. Let's talk about all these families, Hispanic families that are, being oppressed because government is failing to follow the Constitution to put them in prison. It sounds like something that they would want to hear, right? So, given the political climate right now, with the southern border, this is an opportunity that I think we can take advantage of, and I think we can actually get an adversarial news agency to run a story because they want to have a black eye on the administration. And I'm cool with that. As long as it gets the people the rights, I'm cool with that. So I'm going to go to Dallas, and then from Dallas I'm going to go to Houston, and then I'm going to come from Houston over to San Antonio. I don't know how I'm going to get to those places because the train only goes down to Dallas and then to San Antonio. I don't know how I'm going to get over to Houston, but we have friends over there, and maybe, I don't know, maybe a bus. But regardless, I get in Dallas, and then immediately I'll get some sort of transportation over to Houston, and I hope that I can, get through these three stops in the rest of the week. After that, I don't know. That's what I felt like we needed to do. And the good news about that is that is that those markets, yes, they're regional markets, Dallas and Houston stuff. Yes, they're regional, but in between all three of those regional markets is Alex Jones and Joe Rogan. And I guarantee you that they have producers on their staff that probably speak Spanish. They're probably, if we can get into these markets, if we can get even a short segment, that might be enough to get their attention to invite me in. Because the only way you can get onto those shows is by an invite from a producer. So that we need to get the producer to hear, what I'm saying. This is a big issue. It's a big deal. It's worthy of being talked about. So let's talk about it. So you guys can donate on the website. I don't like the idea of donating anywhere else, but we have Cash App, Chime, Venmo, PayPal. They're all exactly the same, and I can't have anything else because once again, you guys know I cannot have independent contracts. I can't have a state ID with an address on it because that would bind me to state contracts. I have to operate in the federal realm. The only ID I have is my federal veteran's ID. It's good for travel, right? I have a federally issued ID, but I don't have a state ID. Nothing with it. So I can't have a bank account. I can't have a GoFundMe because if I did, it would require an address, and I can't have an address. That's why I'm fucking homeless, traveling from fucking state to state because I can't have a home. I can't spend more than 30 days in any particular state because if I did, I would have to establish residency. So I have to reside outside of the states. I have to do this as a sacrifice to be able to maintain this condition, this position, so that I can, at any point in time, walk in the Supreme Court of the United States, invoke Article 3, because I don't have contracts that will limit me, and I don't have to argue with the Solicitor General, because the Solicitor General I can argue myself. But I can because I don't have any contracts that would limit my ability to be able to do the things I'm doing, okay? So that's why I do it. It's not because I'm a dirtbag. It's because I hadn't reached the status. I had to remove all that. That's why Scripture says you got to walk away from everything: house, home, wife, car, kids. Walk away from everything in order to follow God. I had to give up everything. I cannot have a house. I cannot have a car. I cannot have a wife. I cannot have kids. I had to give it all up, man, to do this. But I would kind of like to get this done because I would kind of like to have a wife someday. I'd definitely like to talk to my kids once again. So please help me help you. Let's get this finished, okay? Let's get this finished. We're that close. Thank you guys so much, man. I'm going to go to bed, okay? Have a great rest of your night. If you guys got questions, send the questions out. I don't mind answering questions, like this. I don't mind answering them. But again, like, I'm sorry that I don't respond to you guys. I care a lot about your situation. I care a lot about your stories. I do. But what's happening to you is not valid. It's all just a delusion, and I don't want to go into the delusion. I don't want to immerse myself into it because that's just going to detract energy from me. What I do know is that when they arrested you, they had no authority to do so. That's what I know, and I don't need to know anything else from there, right? I don't need to know anything else because that was the moment that everything else is void. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anything else. You guys don't even have to worry about it. And if you guys could get to that place, then you'd have a whole bunch of stuff. You'd have a whole bunch of time that you could think about other things, right? Correct? That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to control the amount of thoughts that I have to have into things that don't matter, and take those thoughts and apply them toward something that does matter, something I can't control. Okay? So so even you guys, you can have peace of mind. All of you can have peace of mind by knowing the arrest was unconstitutional. Even if they don't see it yet, you can see it, and you can know it, you can believe it, and that will give you some peace of mind, knowing that no matter what happens, no matter what decision they make, no matter what, none of it's going to be valid once we finish this, okay? And so finishing this is getting behind and focusing on one issue and making that court hear that one issue, because we're going to hold them accountable for the crimes they committed against all of you, because they didn't direct their judges to obey the law. And thus, the Supreme Court of the United States has told every judge in the country, you don't have to obey the law, and that means that you're all criminals. So, all right, guys, thank you so much. God bless. Have a great night. Thank you, Facebook. Have a great night. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, YouTube. Have a great night, guys. Thank you.